I got the family vacation home and inheritance, but my brother is not going to let me live it down. I tried to rent it out on a local website so I can get some monthly income. However, he's jealous that he doesn't get to use it at peak hours during the summer. So I say, hey, bro, calm down. How about you just take it at a less busy time?
Well, he wasn't having it.
If you belong to a family or have family members who do not want your growth, and they keep playing the victim in the circumstances they've created, the best thing to do is cut them off and live your life. I used to believe that my brother loved me and wanted the best for me, but it turned out that he resented me and never loved me. I was raised in a family of love, and my parents were just the best parents in the world. I mean, not to brag, but I would not have wished for any other set of parents. My dad was my role model, and he worked so hard to provide for us and just made sure that we were comfortable. My mom was a nurse, and she tried her best in being available for her kids. Despite not having time to spend with us like my dad, Jude was my older brother, and we never really got along. As children, he used to look out for me in school, but when he turned to a teenager, he didn't really have my time anymore. And I didn't mind because he repeatedly told me he was meant to spend time with his peers and not me. As a happy family, we went on multiple vacations together. We had a beautiful vacation house close to the beach, and even when Jude went to college, he had to return home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. My parents did all of this because they wanted us to bond and grow as a family, and they also continuously did their best to teach us why families should always stick together. Look out for each other and just help each other grow. Jude, on the other hand, was always a problem child. He got into a lot of trouble and he was a bully in school. He had this terrible entitlement mentality of using other people's stuff while preserving his own. But if he asked you to give him your stuff and you didn't, he'd just break it or destroy it so nobody else could use it. And this contributed greatly to the bad relationship that we had. Eventually, when the time for college came, I was happy to go and live close to school so I would not have to deal with Jude anymore, and I believed that the only things that would bring us back together would be summer breaks, Thanksgiving, and of course Christmas holiday. But oh boy, I was wrong. The thing was, Jude and I did not go to the same college, and it was obviously not in the same state, but whenever Jude and his brothers were hanging out or going to parties in another state, he would abruptly notify me that he's spending the night in my house. The first time it happened, I was taken unaware. Around 11 p.m. that evening, he just called me out of the blue and said he's around and he'd be coming with a few friends, which ended up being 5 people, including him. I lived in a studio apartment, so you could imagine what it's like to have 6 grown men in it. To make things worse, when Jude came, he and his miserable friends would ransack my stuff and take what they wanted, because Jude encouraged them to do so, and they would tease me while doing it. I reported Jude multiple times to my parents, but there's simply nothing they could or would do. They tried to talk to him, but he never listened. He still acted like a child because he was so sure he could always fall back on our parents. So, after my rent expired in that location, I moved out and refused to share my new location with him until I graduated from college. When Jude was done with college, he graduated with a very bad overall result, which made it difficult for him to get a real job. So, he moved back to our parents' house. My parents were not exactly happy with him, but there was nothing they could do. I, on the other hand, graduated with good grades. I was able to pursue my public career in administration. I also got a job with decent pay, and I could afford to live on my own. A year after Jude moved back in with my parents, he got married to Sophie, his girlfriend who was pregnant for him when they moved in together. But after 4 years, Sophie divorced him because she could not keep up with his manipulative character. Jude, being the possessive person he was, won the child custody of his 2 daughters, and they ended up living with their grandparents. Unfortunately, as time passed, my father fell sick and his health deteriorated rapidly. My mom, who was a nurse, cared for my dad in every way she could. Well, we hoped for him to get better. After 3 months of being so sick, my dad got better, but about a month later he passed away. This was one of the toughest seasons of my life, and I hated that my dad did not at least get to see my children before he passed. After he was successfully buried, we found out that he had his will prepared, just in case he did not have more time. My father willed the house Jude lived in with his family to Jude. It was his biggest property. Then he left me the vacation house that he bought when I was around 12 years of age. To be honest, I was not interested if I was willed anything because my dad being alive was more important to me. Jude was obviously happy. He did not have to pay rent or any mortgage for the house he lived in, and I knew my father willed the house to Jude because he was the oldest, and he was already living in it, so why not? As for the vacation home I knew I could not live there because it's in a different state, and I was not ready to relocate because of a 4-bedroom vacation house. So, for almost a year, I did not do anything with the cabin. I just abandoned it and continued to pursue my career. I didn't have a family yet, and it would have been weird for me to go on vacation all by myself. Later that year, I met my now wife, Crystal, and we used a cabin for our vacation. The cabin was just 7 minutes walk from the beach, and we enjoyed every moment that we were there. After our vacation was over and we were about to leave, Crystal came up with an idea of renting out the vacation house to other people on vacation around us. It was a great idea to make some income, and I was mad at myself for not thinking of it earlier. My father never rented out the vacation house because he was very attached to it. And since the vacation house was in a good location, had a great view from the upstairs, and visitors from the other places, trooped the area almost every day, we put a price of $700 per night and approximately $5,000 for a week. But we did not rent it out the way that it was. I had to change so many things to make it look more modern, and it cost me a pretty penny, which I considered to be an investment in the property. But when everything was set, we began to make at least $22,000 monthly from the vacation house. If it was during summer, when people went on vacation a lot, we could make upwards of $40,000 a month. The income we got from the vacation house alone helped in taking care of a lot of stuff. And because of this new development, Crystal and I started making plans of getting married and growing together. Before I even officially proposed to Crystal, Jude had already married a second wife, a second mother who had 3 children from her ex-husband, and they all moved in with him. It took all of us by surprise because my mom said he never mentioned he was going to marry Jessica. My mom had seen her in the house for a few times with her kids, but she thought Jude's children and her children were just friends. She obviously did not support the idea of Jude raising 3 more children that weren't his. And when she tried to talk to him about it, he just yelled at her and told her to mind her own business, so she let him be. By this time, Jude and I were not close in any way. If I went home to see my mom, the only thing we said to each other was, "What's up?" And that was it. My mom was the only person whom I've told about putting up my vacation house for rent, and I think that's how Jude heard about it. Before he heard about the vacation house, Jude and I never had a conversation that lasted up to 2 minutes. But when he found out, he started acting nice and receptive whenever I visited my mom. I knew he wanted something. It did not take long before he began to complain to me how he was tired of the house, and how he and his family would love a vacation. I knew what he was driving at, but I just played stupid. When he saw that his manipulation was not working, he sent his 2 daughters, my nieces, to ask if they could use my house for a 1-week vacation so his first daughter could celebrate her birthday there too. I wanted to say no, but I couldn't. So I booked them up to use the vacation house on the week of his daughter's birthday. When the time came, Jude and his family of 6 traveled for their vacation and used the home. You see, the vacation house was booked for them that week, and the following week another family was meant to use the home. And when the family got there, they were very disappointed. The house was a disaster. And some appliances were not working. I had to travel down there myself to see what Jude and his family have done. And I regret letting them ever use that house. All of the rooms were turned upside down. They left their leftover food, left empty cups, bottles, and wraps of whatever they took there with them. One of the kitchen stools was broken, and there were pieces of broken dishes everywhere in the home. I had to pay somebody to clean up the house before the family moved in. And the most annoying part was that Jude never mentioned what he had done. I took pictures of the place and sent them to my mother, and she was very disappointed. She apologized on his behalf, and I did not want to confront Jude because it would only make things worse, and my mom already told me to let it go, so I quickly paid out of my pocket for the damages. Even after the months passed, Jude never apologized or mentioned what had happened in the house. There were holes in the wall, scratches on the wall, floors of the room that he used, and he never said a word. He stopped talking to me after that, and we just returned to the way we used to be before. I totally forgot about the incident, and I vowed to never let him or any of us family in the vacation house again, even if they offered to pay triple the amount. Honestly, I was not expecting Jude to want to use the vacation house again after what he did, but he did. The next year, during the summer season, I think I was at work or home when Jude called. That was the first time he called me on the phone that year, and I was very surprised. When I took his call, he starts talking like things have been all rosy between us. But I didn't fall for it. After beating around the bush for some minutes, he finally asked if he could use my vacation house again for the summer. I was so mad at his audacity, but hey, I kept my cool. I told him it's not possible because the house had already been booked for the whole summer, but he kept insisting that I could do something about it since it's my home. I told him there's simply nothing I could do because most people already made their payments 4 months in advance. And that's just bad business for me to ask them to leave or cancel. When he heard that, he yelled at me over the phone and started calling me all the names in the book. He said I was selfish and I cared more about money than my family's happiness. But none of that got to me. I told him my decision was final and I ended the phone call. He called me back several times, and when I did not take his call, he used Jessica's number to call me, but I still did not answer. I told Crystal everything that happened, and she supported my decision. The last thing we wanted was to spend money on cleaning and fixing the house again. 2 days after Jude called, I was at home that weekend with Crystal when the family that rented the vacation house for that week and the following week called with obvious anger in their voice. They sounded very upset on the phone, and I could hear an argument in the background. At first, I thought the family was fighting or something was wrong, so I didn't really panic. It wasn't until they said it was very unprofessional of me to book 2 families for the same week that I had to do something about the other family that's yelling at them, or they would leave and have me refund their money and give a bad review. I was confused because I would never book 2 families for the same week. And these people booked the vacation house for 2 weeks, and no one was to move in there for 3 days until after they left. I tried to explain to them there must be a mix-up somewhere, or the other family is just at the wrong location. But they insisted that a certain Jude said I booked him and his family to use the vacation house. It was also at that time that I recognized a voice in the background, and yeah, it was Jude and his wife Jessica, arguing with the teenage children of the other family. I was so livid. I could not believe Jude could do such a thing. It was almost like a dream, and the craziest part was that the family only moved in the day before the incident happened. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Man, this family dispute is a wild one. Could you imagine just showing up at a vacation house you're not booked for? There's 4 updates for this story, and the first one we're about to hop into. If you guys are new to the channel and you want daily videos, smash that subscribe button with the bell notifications on so you don't miss an update. Here's update number 1. They said they returned from the beach to see Jude and his family on the property, and the moment Jude saw them, he demanded the key. And when they refused to give the key to him, he starts to fight and began to rain abuse on them. When they found out that Jude was my older brother, they were even more angry. Jude made it look like we both owned the property, and it was his turn to take over. He wasn't even polite to them in any way, and he even threatened to have them arrested if they didn't leave. I pleaded with the family to at least wait until I got there so we could settle the matter like adults, but when I got there, I met Jude and his family like the family had described, and I was livid. The moment he saw me, he pretended to be mad that I had booked someone in the house alongside his family, and I was so mad that I could not even control my anger anymore. I punched him in the face. Well, it caused his nose to start bleeding everywhere, and he returned the favor. Our fight got more intense, but we were separated from the husband of the family. At that point, they did not want to hear any more excuses. They said I could settle whatever issue I had with Jude, but they needed their money back because Jude threatened no one could use the house if he didn't, and they didn't travel from a very far distance just to get grown-up family drama. And they left. Immediately after they left too, Jude left with his family. It was almost like he wanted the family to leave so I could lose money and have a bad reputation. Unfortunately, the family had paid $30,000 for the 2-week stay, and they were also demanding an extra $1,500 to cover up the groceries they got, and the food they had to throw away. If they had paid all the money on the day they moved in, it would have been very easy for me to refund, but they paid 80% 4 months ago, and the remaining 20% on the day they moved in. I could only refund 20% that day, and I asked for at least 2 weeks to refund the rest, but they refused to listen. The family said they want their money in 2 days because they want to pay for another vacation house with the money. But it simply just wasn't possible on my end. I tried to explain I did not have $27,000 sitting in my account, and before I knew it, they sued me in court. It was so frustrating for Crystal and me. It didn't end there, though. The family went to our vacation house website and wrote terrible comments about us. They discouraged people from booking our vacation house because of the terrible experience they got. And as a result of that, 2 families called to cancel their reservations, making it a total of almost $100,000 to return. Update number 2. I'd say the worst was, neither Crystal nor I had savings at that period because we were planning our wedding, and most of the savings had gone into that. Also, 2 weeks before everything turned out the way it did, we had invested in cryptocurrency. So we did not even have up to $5,000 even if our accounts were combined together. In the end, we were forced to take a bank loan to pay for the refunds, and this put me in a very terrible position. Crystal and I were forced to postpone our wedding plans until we could get back on our feet financially. One evening the same week, I was just at home brooding over everything that happened in the past few days when I get a notification from our website that somebody dropped a comment. When I checked it, it was another negative comment, but it was from Jude. He wrote so many nasty things about me and the vacation house. He wrote the comments as though he was also a visitor who used my home. He made references to using the house the year before, and he said he wasn't impressed because a lot of appliances weren't even working. And he also added that he would not recommend even his enemies to come here. At that point, I had enough, and I could not take any more of Jude's crap. I called him to take off his comments, but he didn't take my call. While I was trying to get a hold of him, I get more notifications from my website, and they turned out to be more bad comments. One of them came from Jude's wife. She attested to everything Jude said about my vacation house, and other emails from his daughters concurred too. His first daughter said they booked the vacation house to celebrate her birthday, but it ended up being her worst vacation and birthday ever, because there were rats and roaches everywhere in the house, It put them at a health risk. I tried calling Jessica, Jude's wife. She refused to take my phone calls. I was going through a lot emotionally, and the last thing I wanted was for them to add salt to the injury. When Crystal saw all of the comments, she was mad, and she suggested that we sue Jude and his wife in court. I was already mad at Jude for making my life miserable, so I did not think about it too much. I took action and we sued him and Jessica. When Jude got the information that I sued him and his wife in court, he reported me to our mother and she asked to see me. She tried to convince me to settle whatever was going on between Jude and me outside the court, but my mind was already made up. The most annoying part was that Jude did not show any remorse for what he had done. He painted me as the black sheep to my mother and appeared like a knight to shining armor. And no matter how I explained what Jude had done, my mom still insisted that we settled as brothers, but I wasn't having it. Jude knew I listened to everything my mother said, but this one was out of it. He ruined the reputation I worked so hard to build for 3 years, and I was in heavy debt now. I had to postpone my wedding and pause planning because of him. So there's no way I was listening to my mom that time around. Update number 3. So, this week I went to her house and told her to her face that the only place I could settle with Jude was in court. And when he heard that, he kicked me out of the house in my mother's presence and warned me to never step foot there again. He even said it was his choice to show up in court, and I would not force him to do whatever he did not want to. He was just being so childish, because we both knew the penalty to be sued in court and not show up. I just left his house and did not say a word to him. Later that same week, the day of the court hearing came, and Jude showed up with his wife. They did not look very happy to see me and Crystal, but we were delighted to see them. The judge confirmed what our case was about and asked me to explain everything that happened. While I was on it, Jude kept interrupting me, and it was beginning to make the judge mad. Jessica kept raising her hand even when she was not asked any questions, and she ended up being thrown out of the courtroom. I did not only sue Jude for the money I refunded because of how embarrassed my clients, but I also sued him for damages he did to the vacation house the previous year, and for the defamation of character. You know, the terrible reviews he and his family did on our website. At first, the judge thought I was making the story up, because he did not think Jude could do all the things I mentioned, but in the end, it turned out to be true. Everything I paid for damages and cleaning was approximately $7,000, and I had the receipts of the expenses and pictures of the damages he did as my evidence. So, Jude was told to pay $7,000 for damages, $120,000 for the refunds I had to make, and for defamation of character. It was even funny that we had a counterclaim of me harassing him on the day we went to my vacation house with his family, but obviously the judge dismissed it and ruled it in my favor. When we went out to court, he tried to hit Crystal in the presence of everyone, and we went right back to get a restraining order. Jude was so mad that he drove home with Jessica, and she had to take an Uber back home. I was very happy with the way the case turned out, and I knew it would teach Jude a lesson to not think that he owned everyone or that everything just revolved around him. Update number 4. Hey guys, I'm back with another update, and this is going to be my final update. So, 2 days after the court ruled in our favor, I was at home with Crystal when we heard a knock on our front door. Crystal actually moved in with me the first year of our relationship, and we've been living as a couple since then. I was in the bathroom when we heard the loud knock, and Crystal was in the living room. So, we went to check out and see who it was, and as soon as she opened the door, she saw my mom standing there with her bags packed in a corner. It turned out that Jude and Jessica had a nasty fight when Jessica got home that day, and in the process of fighting, she exposed Jude on everything he had done to me. In anger, he kicked Jessica and her children out of the house, and he warned my mom to not let them inside the house. Then he left and did not come home that night. When Jude returned to the house the following morning, he saw that my mom had allowed Jessica and her children to come back inside, and he was so angry. In anger, he threw them out again and also went in to pack some of his mother's stuff. My mom was surprised because the house also belonged to her, as well as it belonged to Jude. She bought the house with my late father, but they thought it was better to let Jude have the main house since he was already living in it. Also, the only way Jude would claim full ownership of the house was after my mother passed away. So he literally had no right to kick her out. My mom was very upset, and she could not believe that her own son threw her out of the house that she bought with my dad. So, we came up with a plan. She had all the documents of the house in her possession, so we suggested that she could also kick Jude out of the house through legal means, and only have him take over the house after her demise, and she did just that. We did the legal processing, and Jude was kicked out of the house that exact same month. But she allowed Jessica and her children to live there until they got their own apartment. Later on, we found out that the reason Jude messed up my vacation house was because of a little misunderstanding we had. Initially, the agreement was for him and his kids' family to spend a week there, but after they got there, they asked if they could spend an extra day, and I agreed. I didn't remember that the extra day they asked for was already booked, and when the couple that was meant to use the vacation house called to remind me, I had to call Jude and tell him that it's no longer possible. Instead of being understanding like I expected him to be, like a normal person, he manipulated the family to believe that I ruined their vacation by canceling the last day they asked for, and he pushed them into messing up the house, scratching the walls, breaking plates, and so much more. After I found out the real truth, I disowned him as my brother and I cut ties with him. As for the debt he owed, he finished paying it off for 4 years ago, and now I don't know his whereabouts or whatever he did with his life. Jessica eventually divorced him, but his 2 daughters are still living with my mom. He's quite unfortunate that God has given my mom long life, and I pray she stays alive for me and her grandchildren for many more years. Crystal and I have been married for 2 years now. We have a daughter, and our vacation house business is booming.
Honestly, I did not see this story playing out any other way than it did. I mean, the brother was confronting these innocent families on vacation. Yeah, you never thought that might come around to bite you in the butt? Well, it looks like it did because the brother was forced to pay all the money to OP. Guys, if anyone's ever been in a similar situation or know somebody that has, drop your comments down below. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more daily videos. Remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya!